So, hello all. We are having today in our podcast, Geotalk, Mr. Francisco Pizarro. Mr. Francisco Pizarro currently is working at AGRU. He's the general manager of Chile and AGRU Brazil. He is a civil engineer. He also has a master in finances and he's finishing one in liberal arts. Francisco is also the president of IGS Chile, and he is a candidate for the IGS Council, the international one. And the votations are open until June 18. So you can check him out in the IGS website as well as in his LinkedIn profile, Francisco Pizarro. So welcome, Francisco. Hope I have introduced you properly to our podcast.
Oh, yeah. A lot of titles, but most important, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks, Tamara, for everything. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sure this will be a very interesting conversation.
I hope so. I hope so. So the reason why you are here in this podcast is because I think you are considered an expert in geosynthetics in general, but in particular in Latin America. You've been working in the industry for how long?
Almost in geosynthetics for about 8 years, 8 to 9 years. Yes, quite some time, and but absolutely very pleasant time. Mostly in several types of geosynthetics and all over the region, from Mexico to the Patagonia. So I have had the experience, the great chance, and being blessed of traveling all over the region, understanding the difficulties in terms of the challenges of the geosynthetics in each country. But yes, quite some time.
Mhm. So I would like to explore with you the geosynthetic situation in Latin America in general. Maybe go a little country by country, that you explain me how the development is going, which countries are consuming a certain kind of products and why. Maybe for that, we can also explain the audience a little bit how the map of Latin America is. We can go from the north to the south. So, because we know the name of the countries, but maybe we don't know exactly where they are and mainly how their geography is and the language they speak. So go ahead, please.
Wow, yes. First of all, Latin America is the different type of cultures you'll find in Latin America is amazing. Personally, in my opinion, I love it because that is also related to different type of foods, different type of languages. Nevertheless, most of the different nations in Latin America speak Spanish. Of course, in Brazil they speak Portuguese, but also there are a lot of indigenous languages, which of course enriches a lot the local cultures. At the end, we come from very indigenous cultures: the Aztecs, the Mayas in Mexico and Central America, the Incas, part of Peru, and the reign of the Incas, part of Latin, not also in Peru, but also part of the Pacific coast, and also the Mapuches and all the rest of the indigenous cultures in the rest of the south of Latin America. But in the end, we're talking about a very different type of cultures. Geographically, it's also a challenge because, especially in the Pacific and part of the Central America, you will find a very accidental, let's say, geographic. Actually, well, in Chile is the country with most earthquakes in the world. The biggest one, yes. We are in the whole Pacific coast. It's inside what is called the Ring of Fire in terms of earthquakes. So this is also related to the geography you will find in the Pacific, do the Andes, in the Atlantic coast for Brazil, for Uruguay, for Argentina. It's totally different. That is why they are more developed in oil and gas, because you need another type of geography for that. But it's another much much more shallow, much more plain, so they're not so accidental, nor not as much mountains or volcanoes as are in the Pacific coast. So, and in between, a lot of rainforest. You'll find in Brazil the biggest reserve in the world for the Amazonas. The same way in Central America, a lot of different type of rainforest. Costa Rica actually has the biggest wildlife in the world. So in a nutshell, you will find between Mexico and the Patagonia, different type of cultures, but different types of soils, of geography. It's very hard to define one country as very similar to the other one. Actually, they are very different. And that at the same time makes the application of geosynthetics quite a challenge in each country, because the use of geosynthetics in each country is totally different. For example, in Chile, most of the geosynthetics or historically have been involved in mining, because Chile is, as well as Peru, are mining countries. And for them, if you take a look, which is the biggest geosynthetic they use, probably are geosynthetics related to separation, in this case, or as a barrier. For example, GCLs are most important geomembranes that are used for tailings or for aeration ponds, because mining sites are quite away from the civilization, some way of saying, so they need to keep water or to stabilize or to keep some tailings apart. So that's the need for thousands of square meters of geomembranes. In the other side, you have, I don't know, for example, more in the Central America, a lot of use of drainage and erosion control due to geosynthetics, due to the high level of rains. In Argentina, the type of requirements are more, let's say, there's a lot of requirements in stabilization. So geogrids, geocells are also quite a requirement. So at the end, the whole portfolio of geosynthetics has its own market in each country, and that makes it extremely interesting, but also an opportunity, because the market of geosynthetics in Latin America still has a lot of opportunities to grow, definitely. And that's why also the International Geosynthetic Society, society that I'm part of due to my participation in the Chilean chapter, has a lot of responsibility in order to enhance, to promote, to create critical mass in geosynthetics.
Yeah, because at the end, I think communities need construction and civil engineering, and then civil engineering needs geosynthetics. So geosynthetics come to make civil engineering more efficient, and construction more durable. So geosynthetics per se are not the need, is the need to improve how we build things in a more economic and sustainable way, I would say. So the needs in different countries are different. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I've always heard or worked more with geosynthetic needs in some particular countries. For example, I've seen movement in more than in other ones. Let's say I've seen more movement in Panama for being so little. It has a strong geosynthetic culture. That's in Central America, but it has, and I don't know. Actually, I don't know why. I don't know if you have any suggestions why Panama.
Probably, I comes to my mind probably two reasons. One, it's because it's extremely well located in geographic terms. So the more you are open at the end to the market, the more type or more open are you are you're willing to have more products and technologies. Of course, that depends also in the political and social aspects. But geographic influences a lot. And what I'm trying to say is they are very near the US, which is a big, definitely a name in the manufacturing of geosynthetics worldwide. So having them so close, it's also a blessed. Being blessed in terms of having so many products. But also they are quite close to Colombia. That are in a nutshell, they are for me, one of the leaders in the application of geosynthetics in Latin America. They are a success case of application of geosynthetics in Latin America, due their policy and do also the big manufacturers they have locally. They have very two strong manufacturers locally. They are also, of course, other manufacturers, but they have two very strong manufacturers. And the culture of geosynthetics in Colombia probably is a little bit more advanced compared to other countries, which is, of course, very interesting in order to other countries to put in the same level. I think Chile, Peru, Brazil are also going in that direction. There's still a lot to do, and that is actually one of the goals of the IGS in order to promote this type of applications and make the geosynthetics become a product of construction. At the end, we're trying to promote that geosynthetics are, as just like you said, a sustainable and more efficient way to make infrastructure.
Yeah,
that's the at the end, that's the goal.
When you say that Colombia is more advanced, could you explore a little bit more that idea? What do you mean with that?
Because if you take a look from the technical perspective, in geotechnics, and that is also related to the geography of, at the end, calls the attraction of talent, of technology. Colombia, it's not an easy country geographically speaking. It's have hundreds of mountains, different types of soils. It's a challenge geotechnically speaking. So one way of fighting that issue is having good products and good technical solutions. And geotechnics, that's also why geotechnics, it's also related to geosynthetics, because at the end, geosynthetics enhances and supports the work of geotechnics in order to make more efficient and more sustainable infrastructure. And also that's also calls, because when you have such a, let's say, business opportunity at the end of marketing, that's what at the end many companies are looking for. If you see that there's a big opportunity there, you become a big player in manufacturing. And Colombia is today, as I said before, a big player in manufacturing, but also because they are blessed, because they are very rich in terms of oil, and they have refineries, and that gives the opportunity to in some companies become or be as more vertical as possible. They have great access to the raw materials, polyethylene, polypropylene, and that way they can manufacture cheaper and better products. So at the end, Colombia is a very good product. And you see also that technically speaking, when you take a look at the INVIAS, which is, let's say, the highway manual, the handbook, the highway handbook for Colombia, you take a look.
The audience can look on that if they want to, INVIAS.
Yeah, you just Google INVIAS Colombia, and you'll find 600 pages document of how you need to make infrastructure for basically for highways or for similar infrastructure challenges. And you'll see that geosynthetics have an important presence on the handbook compared to other countries that, for example, Chile, the Manual de Carreteras, the local handbook, isn't as developed as INVIAS. And that, of course, is a whole challenge for all the companies, all the governments, the universities, the technical institutes, in order to promote the use of geosynthetics.
So would you say the use of geosynthetics in other countries would be increased if these other governments had a look to the INVIAS, which is INVIAS, right? Like,
correct. Yes, I'm just naming.
Yeah, like a manual like that.
I think it's a benchmark in some
places.
Yeah,
it's a benchmark, exactly. That would be a way of increasing the use of geosynthetics if they could emulate.
Absolutely, because at the end, the governments, the state, in order to make more sustainable and better infrastructure, need to embrace better technologies better products. It's their responsibility to test them, to prove them, and if they are showing that they are efficient, to implement them in the in the construction of infrastructure. So yes, the government has a big responsibility on that, but also the companies, because the companies is the private companies that at the end show that at the end import the product and try to implement it in a specific country, and that makes and that it takes a big effort in terms of testing, in terms of pilots. If you want to, for example, to show that your membrane or your, for example, your erosion control product works well in a slope, you need to test it, and you need to show that it's better, for example, compared to shotcrete. Shotcrete is as a competitor for many products of geosynthetics, and geosynthetics show that actually they are better, that they perform better than shotcrete for very specific requirements. And that happens the same in every aspect of geosynthetics, no matter if erosion control, if it's as a barrier, as a stabilization, drainage, whatever. So huge market and a huge opportunity for all the geosynthetic ecosystem worldwide.
So you were mentioning earlier, and that's something that we can see also in other continents, that manufacturers and good manufacturing practices and manufacturing entrepreneurship is linked to the raw materials source. And that's something that we see in the USA, of course. All the geosynthetics came out of Houston area at the beginning, and then they started going to other places in the US. We see it in Middle East area. We have another concentration of manufacturers there, and we see as well in South America or Latin America. By the way, which one is preferable? I always had this question: South America or Latin America?
In terms of word?
In terms of correctness, yeah. If I want to be correct, which one?
Well, South America at the end takes from Venezuela to the south, but I prefer to speak of Latin America because that makes me call my brothers of Central America and Mexico countries that I love. So I prefer Latin America. So yes.
Nice. Yes. Thank you. So yeah, so if you are looking at Latin America map, and I have one here, what other concentration of raw materials produce products you have that have developed into geosynthetic manufacturing? You just mentioned Colombia. Is there any other place in Latin America that you can?
Yes, Brazil is also a huge player in geosynthetics, and I also believe because of the resource and the source of having raw materials locally, also Brazil is a huge player in oil and gas and refineries. So once you have your products on the next door, or in this next to your neighborhood, it's cheaper. The more vertically integrated you are, the more synergies, or the more efficient you are in your business. So I believe in this case, Brazil is also a huge case. They have a couple of big companies, well-respected companies in the manufacturing of products that are very specific. So yes, I believe Brazil is another interesting example. But at the end, they also serve a local market that is huge. It's a big market. So at the end, nevertheless, they export a lot. You need to consider that most of the product goes locally. So that's important to remark. But yeah, from the East Coast, basically Brazil, and from the West Coast, Colombia is probably an important case. Of course, there are other manufacturers, smaller, but the bigger ones are the one I mentioned, and I believe that's one of the big reasons too.
So I've always heard that Brazil market was huge, but it was a very complicated market. I don't know if you agree with that. I never worked in Brazil, so I have no idea. I have many Brazilian friends.
I mean, each country has its own, let's say, pros and cons, in some way of saying, but I believe that each country at the end, if it's has a very good go-to-market strategy, and your product fits well, you can be successful everywhere. In the case of Brazil, of course, it's not an easy country because if you are importing a product, you find local manufacturers. There are also local manufacturers. It's part of their culture to also, not also in geosynthetics, but everywhere. If you go to compete, I don't know, in TV antennas, you probably it will be harder for you to import a TV antenna because there are local manufacturers. It's part of their strategy to become independent in some way. In that, and I share that definitely. But of course, from the import side, it's difficult because there are a lot of taxes. So it is a very gentle way of making you a little bit more expensive. But at the end, in some geosynthetics, and we are, I'm also general manager of AGRU Brazil, and I see that every day that there's a market for everybody and for everyone. And our product in Brazil has no competition because in some areas, in some key markets, because it is a product that is not manufactured locally, and we reach technical and high-end products that no one can. So at the end, it is a competition for not only the best price, but also adding value to our customers. And that's in the line of what I described before, that is your market fits well. You need to find a market first, but I'm sure that each country in Latin America could be successful for the different type of geosynthetics. So it's just about a very good go-to-market strategy.
So I'm looking at the map and I see a huge line down the Pacific coast. It's a brown line because it's the mark of the height, right? It's the Andes, Los Andes.
Yes.
By the way, you are civil engineer in the University of Los Andes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, the Andes in some way, it's a way to characterize the Latin American region, because the Andes is too long and too beautiful too, but also represents, and also the Andes, especially Peru and Chile, are being blessed of having mining, because the Andes are the ones that host most of the copper and the gold that it's exploited, that is produced, and due to that we have so many technological advances due to those two materials that actually they will be very important for the future, as well as the lithium, which is quite on top right now. So yes, we are some way of being blessed of having those resources, and we as manufacturer of geosynthetics have the responsibility to provide sustainable and efficient solutions, and I'm sure we have those compared to the traditional way of doing engineering. So yes, it's definitely being blessed on having those resources and those mountains like the Andes.
Do you feel like there's a concentration of engineering firms in the capital of Peru and Chile compared to other countries like Uruguay, Bolivia? Do you think there's more a tighter engineering community there?
At the end, in terms of a marketing perspective and a strategic perspective, which at the end is the art of having results, you need to be where your customer is. So engineering firms, most of we have a lot of multinational companies, Fluor, Bechtel, SRK, Jacobs, Worley Parsons, etc. Well respected, but also there are very, let's say, local firms, but most of their headquarters, the regional headquarters, are in those countries, because at the end that's where the big projects are happening. So you need to be close with where your customer is. That is also definitely a challenge for other customers, for other countries that are aiming for other type of projects, probably not as mining, but definitely in some other countries you are having big infrastructure projects, for example, Colombia, that is growing a lot in terms of infrastructure. They are currently in the 5G, fifth generation of highways. And you find a lot of local civil engineer firms, probably not the typical ones in infrastructure, but there are many local firms that are very well respected. I've worked with them, and I honestly, I admire the way they work. And they are extremely focused on infrastructure, on highways, because that's probably the potential. That's why they are now in the 5G, fifth generation of highways. So at the end, in general aspects, yeah, the engineering firms are located where the customer needs are, and that's why probably most of them are located in this area.
So according to what you're saying, I can see that infrastructure is more developed somehow in Colombia region. Mining is on Peru and Chile. And
I mean, where the potential is, probably
the need is.
The explosion of the 5Gs, of the 3Gs, the 4Gs, and now the 5G in Colombia is related to probably 20 years ago. They say we have no highways, or our state of the art in highways, it's not as good as we would like. This is a strategy, and the concessions model, the private concession model, has brought a lot of growth, especially in many countries in Latin America. This is a model that born in Chile almost 25 years ago, and has been extremely successful because it's at the end, it's a public-private policy that enhances good infrastructure, that diminishes the risk for the state, risk being saying that is debt, and the private takes all the risk and is also rewarded with the return. But at the end, the final owner of the infrastructure is the state, is us, is the nation. So it's a great model that has go viral in good way whole Latin America, in many countries of Latin America. So that's a great success, and that's why probably Colombia has in the last couple of years have taken so much development in that area. So you see a lot of concessions of those highways, which is quite good, and you see a lot of tunnels, because what I'm saying also that Colombia has a very, let's say, different type of geography. It's very accidentally, geographically speaking. So you need to go through mountains, and the way of doing it is through tunnels or through also bridges from point to point. So at the end, yes, currently probably in terms of infrastructure or highway, Colombia is the country today, as it was Chile 15, 20 years ago. And for sure, Brazil is also, if you go in the highways through Brazil, I go there every month to stay to visit my team, and you see highways for 6 lines per side. So it's amazing. It's like the US type of highway, and you see, well, this is just in Sao Paulo, and it's replicated everywhere in all the states of Brazil. So yes, I think each country has its own, let's say, appeal. Some ways highways, and some others are hydraulic infrastructure, or mining, or it's landfills. So I mean, at the end, Latin America has a lot of potential of growth, and that's where many geosynthetic companies are aiming to go, because there are still opportunities.
So what new generation of geosynthetics are you seeing coming in? Where do you see geosynthetics today, and where do you see them in, let's say, 5 years from now in Latin America?
Today, geosynthetics are worldwide. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that has been growing in 2 digits mostly. In Latin America, it's not the exception. It was, I was saying, local manufacturing, but lots of imports. And the end, nevertheless, most of geosynthetics have already been, let's say, made or discovered, probably the correct word is made. The technological leap, it's more on the type of product that is being used, the type of technology, the raw material. The raw materials are continuously improving. The PP or the PE that basically constructs each geosynthetics, no matter if a geogrid, a geonet, geocell, geomembrane. They are evolving year from year due to their raw material. They are lighter, they are stronger, and that's where the in 5 years probably we'll see the same type of geosynthetics, but with better properties. And you see, if you take a look at geotextile, let's say a typical average geotextile that is imported in some country, and for certain type of properties, probably you'll see that in 5 years you will see the same geotextile, but with more volume inside the container. What I'm trying to say is that lighter geotextiles are reaching higher properties in terms of puncture, in terms of tear resistance, in terms of durability. So at the end, that's where the industry is going, improving the technique of the raw materials and how are they displayed in the product. So that's where the industry is going. And of course, well, that's one of the reasons why I joined AGRU, my current company, because we are leaders on the use of polyethylene, polypropylene, the PVDF, CTFE, etc., in the use of raw materials. And we at the end manufacture different type of products due to the use of raw materials.
That's great. I think we've covered a lot. If people wanted to reach out to you, how can they do it?
Well, usually I'm quite active in LinkedIn, so be totally open. I have thousands of connections, but also looking forward for more and constructive connections. So reach me out, Francisco Pizarro in LinkedIn. Of course, if you have any questions, if you are interested of knowing a little bit more about geosynthetics, of doing business too, please, in my current company, please be open to reach me, and you'll at the end you'll find an answer. I can assure that.
So just for finishing, can you tell us who was Francisco Pizarro, the other Francisco Pizarro that is maybe
actually
no, it was
it's the two last names. It's Pizarro Gonzalez. Yes. Francisco Pizarro was the conqueror of Peru, was a Spanish conqueror in the 15th century, the 15th to the 16th century, that arrived to South America, and he was the Virrey del Peru, Virrey of, I don't know the English word for Virrey, but he was basically the king of Peru for many years. So yes, it's quite a character here in the region. It is very funny that I don't know if my parents read about this history in the past when they put my name, my first name, but it is funny that I'm exactly called by Francisco Pizarro Gonzalez. So far, I haven't inherited anything. So far, no gold, no chrome, but it's funny. At the end, in some cases, help for my Peruvian, the first years when I was doing business in Peru, it was a great way of breaking the ice.
Oh yeah, it's a great conversation.
They're looking at me like, is this a joke? I don't know. Yeah, it's very funny, but it is probably the guy that is called Abraham Lincoln in the U.S. also has is suffering the same. So yes.
Yeah, we wish the best to Abraham Lincoln now too.
Yeah. I'll LinkedIn it. I'll Google it. Someone is Abraham Lincoln. It could be funny.
Maybe LinkedIn, right? Okay, well, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure. I've learned a lot today about South America and geosynthetics. I appreciate you taking your time to talk to us in Geosynthetica with this Geotalk podcast. And
Oh,
yeah.
it's been a pleasure, Tamara. Always a pleasure to talk to you, to speak with Christopher. It's I congratulate you for the things you're doing with Geotalk Podcast. It's a great way of and empowering and creating critical mass in geosynthetics. So it is quite an honor to be here with you today.
First, perfect. Well, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. See you soon.